So, how important is battery life for you? If you want a big one, then this one might be for you. Stay tuned. So when Oukitel reached out to me and asked me if I could do a review of their products, they sent over 3 different phones. One is the K6 that has a 6000 mAh battery, one is the K8000 that has an 8000 mAh battery, and one is the K10 that has an 11000 mAh battery. Yes, you heard that correctly. 11,000 mAh battery. Now all 3 would warrant you for a good battery life, there's no doubt about it. However, today we are looking at the biggest one, the Oukitel K10. Now when you have a phone like this, of course the first thing that you should know is that it's not thin, it's not light or anything like that. But really, would you want to? A phone this thick, you kind of need to design it differently, and they did. While it implements some basics that we see today, like an 18:9 ratio display and a dual camera on the back, but also on the front, it is a very different design, giving it a much rougher look, and it works for a phone like this. At the back we have this faux leather texture and this oddly shaped dual camera cutout, but also the fingerprint scanner is placed below it. The corners are not smooth like we are used to, but more like a diagonal cut. Overall though, for a phone this size, it does feel pretty good in the hand. However, it does weigh quite a bit. But with a phone like this you want to test it out, you want to max it out, and that is what I have done last week, giving you guys some updates where it was left on Twitter. I originally started using the phone on the 26th of January, with it finally dropping below the 10% on the 3rd of February, which is really impressive, with having more than 23 hours of screen on time, with having the brightness at the middle. Now I have to say that I'm not always an average user, see how I mostly work at home or at the office. And then at those times I don't tend to use the phone a lot, apart from playing some music. Which is nice, but not as nice when you have to use a dongle. But if you calculate that on an average user that has a screen on time from 5 to 6 hours a day, you would still get 3 to 4 days of use before you have to charge it. And when you do have to charge it, it is quick, because it does feature quick charging and it just takes 2.5 hours to fully charge the 11,000 mAh battery. So what was the experience of using a phone like this in a week? Well, it's different. Coming from a Samsung Galaxy S8 to the Oukitel K10 is quite a big step. For one, it's a much thicker phone and you feel it, but also a much heavier phone, which you again also feel. So it's something that you have to adjust to compared to the Samsung Galaxy S8. Next to that, the Samsung Galaxy S8 has a sleeker menu than the Oukitel K10. I just prefer the style of the Samsung Galaxy S8 of course. However, this is a budget phone and it's just made for its battery. This is the focus for that phone and you should see it as that. And for that, I have to praise it, because I just didn't have to worry about charging it, where the Samsung Galaxy S8, being my second phone at that moment, had to be charged every single day. And that is quite impressive. But of course there's more to this phone than its battery life, and then we come to the camera, or cameras we might say. The dual camera on this phone gives you a 2x optical zoom, but like most phones around this price, the dual camera doesn't capture the depth of the picture. The so-called bokeh effect is just a circle. And while the 2x zoom is a thing, you should simply remove the option of bokeh when the camera doesn't allow for the depth of the picture to be captured. And the same story goes for the dual front camera. I'm not sure what the benefit of this one is though, but either way you cannot capture the depth in the picture itself with the dual camera delivered with this phone. So let's talk about the camera sensors itself. On the back we have a dual camera like I said, with the main sensor being a Samsung ISOCELL with a 21 megapixel sensor. And the second sensor is an 8 megapixel sensor. For the front we have a 13 megapixel camera sensor and an 8 megapixel camera sensor. Overall pictures taken on this phone are decent. While it can capture some good pictures, from time to time it has overexposure problems at the background. And with the dynamic range having trouble capturing the foreground. But for a price like this, it's not that bad actually. And when you are trying to capture low light pictures, the colors are correct. And that's pretty much the only thing good I have to say about it. there's quite a large amount of grain, and while watching on the phone itself is acceptable, you really shouldn't zoom in and check on it close up, or watch it on a big screen. This is mainly because the phone has a smaller pixel size, but also because it only has a 2.8 aperture, which is really tiny compared to other phones out there. And for video, while it has a good amount of saturation, the lack of optical image stabilization makes the camera footage very unstable. And then we come to the display. Now while its battery is big, the screen itself is also big, with it being a 6-inch Full HD Plus IPS display with an 18:9 ratio. And while the screen is decent, it's nothing to write home about. The biggest issue that I have with it is when you lay in a bed in a darker situation or anything like that, the screen just doesn't get dim enough. Good thing in turn is that it does seem to get bright enough. But when you are watching videos, however, don't expect that the speakers will provide you with an extra dimension to it, because the sound coming out of this is pretty bad, even more with higher pitched sounds like a piano. Okay, so let's talk about the icons on this phone. While I get that it fits the design of the phone and the general feel of this phone better, it is something that I myself do not prefer. It makes it look older, like you're using an older Android version, even though it is installed with Android 7.1.1. So that in itself, for me, could use a bit of work. Overall though, my experience with this phone is decent. Like we all know, its battery life makes this phone a beast. The phone, while not being the fastest out there, with the MediaTek Helio P23 is still fast enough. And I haven't had any bad experience in terms of lag or anything like that. And it does come with enough internal memory and RAM, with it having 64GB of memory and 6GB of RAM. But at the end, this isn't the phone that you buy for being the fastest out there or having the best camera for its price. You buy this phone when you are outside a lot, or basically when battery life really matters to you. In those terms, there are hardly any phones out there that can come close to this. While it might not be for me, seeing how I work a lot of times behind the desk, I can respect its target, and there will be plenty of people who will do that as well. Either way, I will leave a link in the description for this one, but also for the K6 and the K8000 in the description below, but also on the top of the comments. Either way, have a good one and talk to you guys in the next.